Springfield's Talk 104.1. Good Thursday. Welcome to the show, everyone. My name is Nick Reed. Tomorrow, Friday. Already there. And we will be doing the Friday Road Show at Scramblers. If you'd like to come out and have some breakfast or maybe a hamburger for breakfast while we're out there broadcasting, we'd love to see you. You can just say hey, give a wave if you want. Wait during a short break, come up and chat, and it'll just be a great way to start off what I'm sure is going to be a beautiful day weather-wise. We'll get into the first alert forecast look coming up here in just a couple of moments. I want to mention that because got a lot of feedback on it in the 8 o'clock hour yesterday. If you missed it, we talked to the CEO of Visit Springfield. It's sort of like the tourism organization that isn't run by the government but works closely with the government and the local Springfield government for the purposes of promoting tourism, and got his perspective on convention, the convention center, his arguments that we need one, the reasons why we need one, and sort of the concept behind them and so forth. Next week, I didn't talk a lot with him or ask him a lot of questions about the funding stuff so much, though it did come up just a bit, but largely because that's not his area so much. That's the area of the people running Springfield, and so next week we're going to have a couple of folks. We'll have the mayor of Springfield on. We'll also have a Greene County Commissioner, Bob Dixon, presiding commissioner, and his perspective on it as somebody who supports it. And particularly with the mayor, given the tax implications and the city paying consultants to come up with these numbers and what the numbers say, what they don't say. So there will be more discussion about that aspect of it with those two individuals next week. And I do recommend that if you have any interest in hearing what the CEO of Visit Springfield had to say on it, then we have that podcast up, and it's the 8 a.m. hour, that third hour of yesterday's podcast. And I thought it went pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. I think some of the areas that a lot of people have of concerns weren't necessarily the areas that he, spoke on as much, largely, again, because we're talking about the tax implications and that math on the tax. And I'll bring it up next week. For me, one of the biggest things is the consulting firm that said, for this to work, you have to have a 400-plus room hotel attached to it, and the city has so far signaled that there are no plans for that, and that if that happens, it's not part of their plans, but they'll maybe work with some private investors, and it doesn't seem to be a priority for a project that they have been told is a have to. And to me, that's just a real huge question mark in there, aside from whether the convention center is a good idea or not a good idea. So that's, some of, again, what we'll talk about next week.
And that is Wednesday, and that'll be the 7 o'clock hour.
Yes, there we go, Wednesday, 7 o'clock hour. Today is the day at 4 o'clock at the Discovery Center.
Oh, that's right.
That they're finally, the architectural group, or firm, whatever, that has developed the designs, they're going to unveil what it is that it's going to look like. And I will say, I don't know how all of that process works, but it just does feel a little rushed to me. Not that this conversation hasn't been going on forever and ever and ever, but the first vote, there wasn't any design at all. And then it became clear that the city felt, and the promoters of the convention center felt, that one of the reasons people did not vote for it as they got feedback was because there really wasn't enough information. Like, what is this thing going to look like? Where's it going to be? And so all of a sudden, we got to have this vote in April. I think that they feel the longer this goes out, the less opportunity they're going to have to get it done. I suspect they feel as if this is really not the full-blown, but close to a make it or break it vote in April, that if it doesn't happen here, it really greatly diminishes the likelihood that they're going to get a vote to support the tax that is going to be used to fund this. And that's a very quick deadline. And then there was a deadline or an unveiling that was supposed to have taken place a few weeks ago, but then they got community feedback, and so, well, they had to incorporate that into it, and so the unveiling got postponed a couple of weeks, and it just this isn't a process I'm overly familiar with, so this may be exactly how it always plays out. But it just, on the outside surface, seems a bit like, okay, we got to get this. Here's the deadline. It's coming up in a couple weeks, and you guys got to throw something together. We got to have something to show people, and then we got feedback from the community that maybe wasn't consistent with what they came up with, so we got to go back to the drawing board and hurry up. We got to get this done fast. And oftentimes, maybe that does work out well, but sometimes when you rush things just to hit a deadline, it doesn't always work out best. And that's not to say that the plans can't change, of course, as well. But does that make sense? The way that feeling, it's just my gut feeling on that. So some of those questions may get answered next week. But I do want to thank the CEO of Visit Springfield for coming in, and he was a pleasure. Enjoyed meeting the guy.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy. Mm-hmm. It's always a nice thing, too, when you have people in, and they're just nice. You just get the feeling that they're nice people. Speaking of nice, Christy Fulnecki is not going to be joining us in the 7 o'clock. I just want to give you a heads up on that. So while that hour is airing, which will be full of incredible content, if you want to go back and listen to a previous 7 a.m. hour from a Thursday in which she was on, my feelings will not be too hurt. Maybe you missed last week, so you can do that. But we will have an Author of the Week sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone in the 8 o'clock hour. All right, coming up, we're going to get the news weather here, but there was, of course, a great deal of excitement by the media and those trying to sabotage the war against Iran about this Joe Kent guy from the CIA, who in the past had made public postings about how he felt Trump should have gone further prior to the launch of attacks against Iran, that arguing Trump needed to take military action. Well, suddenly he's doing kind of this about face and said, I had to resign because I just didn't think Iran was an imminent threat. And it appears as if this is someone that for some time now has been under investigation for leaking classified information. And while it might be just fortuitous for Joe Kent, he now has this baked-in defense, doesn't he, at least publicly? Oh, I'm being punished. This is about coming after a critic of Donald Trump. Oh, this is what Donald Trump is doing to me. I'm not saying a defense of his claims that he has been against this military action in Iran because he disagrees with the assessment, but a defense criminally speaking that, no, I didn't leak classified information. I'm just a critic of Trump. I called him out, and look, the target is on my back. And it will certainly give Democrats talking points as well. Could be total coincidence. Or it could be pretty standard fare for D.C. and the Democrat Party. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 80. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 52. For your Friday, sunny with a high near 86. And taking a look at Saturday, sunny skies with a high near 87.
Joe Kent walked out of a top U.S. intelligence role, accusing allies and insiders of dragging the country into war with Iran. Now, fresh reporting suggests he's been under federal investigation for months. The former director of the National Counterterrorism Center didn't just resign quietly, lit a match on the way out, publicly breaking with the administration and accusing key players of pushing the U.S. into a conflict he argued never should have happened. Now, these statements conflict with past postings that he has made on social media, in the past arguing that when Trump was taking non-military routes, that he should be taking military routes and dealing with Iran. So, out of the gate, you already have conflicting versions of his assessment as somebody who worked within the U.S. government. People change their minds. I think, though, if it's based off of new information, you're making such an accusation in front of the world stage, it's incumbent upon you to explain why you changed your mind. I mean, that's an important thing. What made you change? Well, when you throw in there the fact that you are under federal investigation, and what is the number one defense that is used by individuals, particularly left-wingers, though I don't know this guy's political affiliation. But what is the number one excuse? that you hear used by corrupt individuals that find themselves subject of investigation or prosecution during the Trump years. It's always the same. It's Trump coming after political opposition. Trump weaponizing the government. Trump using the Department of Justice to go after people who criticize him. He's a dictator. I mean, this is a song and dance you get from every corrupt and even, I mean, they're still corrupt, but just even failures on the left. The Jimmy Kimmels, the Stephen Colberts, it's all Trump, 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 Trump. Anything and everything that ever happens to me that is the result of my own behavior, be it a failed talk show or perhaps leaking classified information, I'm actually innocent. It's just that Donald Trump is coming after me. Now, we know that is going on, according to the reports, and it has been for months. So this isn't something that Joe Kent made this public declaration before the world, and then suddenly they wrote up some sort of investigation. This has been going on for months, and clearly Joe Kent knew about it. And it would be interesting to know whether or not Joe Kent felt and his attorneys felt that it was pretty imminent that he was going to be charged with something, and how that potentially came into play with him preempting it by resigning, but claiming these are the reasons, knowing that this sort of accusation would get him on the world stage. And have baked in the eyes of the media and the Democrats a defense. Even something as simple as, how am I going to pay for my attorneys? You think about the difference in that. If Joe Kent is a guy who one day gets walked out of his office because he gets indicted for leaking classified information, it may be a little blip of a story, but outside of that, no one's going to know. No one's going to pay attention to that. You instead turn him into some sort of martyr, or he turns himself into a martyr that is going to and already being invited on the shows, already being portrayed as a victim of the great dictator Donald Trump. You think that this guy's not going to have people on the left throwing money at a GoFundMe or whatever form of fundraising this guy's going to do? Now, who knows? It may not play out that way, but we certainly, if you're Joe Kent, and you recognize how people who have been put on the world stage as victims of Donald Trump have had people on the left throw money at them without knowing anything whatsoever about the case against them, you could see how somebody like Joe Kent would be like, this might be a good way to pay for my defense. While baking in, with the help of the media and the Democrat Party, a defense of I'm just a victim of Donald Trump. Now, all of that's circumstantial, but we're also absent any other explanation, as to what made him change his positioning on this, going from someone who once posted publicly that Donald Trump should have, he gave Trump credit saying, hey, Trump's proven himself to be successful, so we're going to give him benefit of the doubt here, but he should have gone in and destroyed all of this. He should have bombed the heck out of that. Talking about Iran. And if you don't provide any sort of explanation, and Lord knows he's not going to be prompted to by the media, it certainly leaves an open question as to what else is going on here. Seems suspicious, and it also seems like a pretty common play out of the left-wing playbook. I want to, incidentally, So what this guy says? I mean, the way that this entire Iranian coverage is playing out, you would think that Iran was some country like Greenland that had never done a thing to anyone, never provided any evidence whatsoever that they had any interest in terrorism or taking out Israel or taking out the United States. And Donald Trump just one day made these outrageous claims with absolutely no reason whatsoever, with no historical reference, with no intelligence whatsoever. Iran is a terrorist country. Iran is the number one supporter of terrorism in the world. Iran has, just 2 weeks ago, a guy found guilty in New York courts, of all places, for attempting to set up the assassination of Donald Trump on behalf of the Iranians. They have killed over the years over 1,000 Americans. All of this deliberately, all of it while bragging about it. We know that it's just so frustrating. The nuclear capabilities, and we're going to talk again about that because we've got some audio that's, I think, very important to think about and to talk about with Tulsi Gabbard and this back and forth she had yesterday where they were attempting, the Democrats, to get her to declare whether the CIA declared Iran an imminent threat. And she's like, well, that's the president of the United States is the one that makes that assessment. We provide the information, and he determines whether it is an imminent threat. And then the Democrats were like, no, you're supposed to do that. Because that's a very important thing to talk about. We're going to talk about that coming up. But this has been going on for decades with Iran. The past 6, or I think Victor David Hansen noted the past 7 presidents, that would include Trump, have all said we cannot let Iran get a nuclear weapon. Yet, if you turn on the news today, you would think that no one even knew that they were even wanting to get a nuclear weapon. No one knew that they had anything to do with terrorism. I mean, we're very confused. Are they really a threat? What's going on here? Donald Trump's out of control. What world are you living in? And while I can entertain to some degree discussions about whether or not this is the best way to go about it, this wake up in a new day and redefine the world stage and act as if, some random guy that no one's ever heard of from the CIA who's under investigation for leaking classified information has suddenly claimed, oh, yeah, I didn't think that it was a threat. Oh, well, Joe Kent didn't think it was an imminent threat. Well, clearly the president shouldn't have done this then. The man that the American people voted for in an election to be commander-in-chief, he should have defaulted to this Joe Kent guy that no one's ever heard of before. That's the way that that's the narrative and environment that they want to create. They want people to go, oh, well, I mean, this guy over here that I didn't know of until yesterday, that is now on NBC, he's saying that he didn't think it was an imminent threat. Well, elections be damned. I guess this is the guy who should be calling the shots. Does that really make any sense? It does not make sense because it's not in tune with reality. And of all the different people working within the CIA, okay, here's a guy who claims that it wasn't an imminent threat. Guess what? I can find someone in the CIA who says he did or she did. So what do we do then? Do we get all of the people within the intelligence agency to line up on 2 sides and play some version of Red Rover, and whoever's left standing, they're the one who gets to decide whether it's an imminent threat? Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 52. For your Friday, sunny with a high near 86. And taking a look at Saturday, sunny with a high near 87.
I saw a report yesterday referencing that gas prices haven't been this high since 2023, which of course is the Biden years. And I just find it so humorous. And I don't like the gas prices being higher than anybody else. I'm not as panicked as some people just because virtually everything that comes Trump's way in terms of an economic catastrophe, he's always, this is what's going to happen. And he's like, no, it's not. He's always right. Whether it's the economy crashing, the stock market crashing, the tariffs causing the stock market to crash. And even if there's a temporary, I remember when that was going on, and it was like 2 days, and the stock market went way down, and Trump was like, hey, this is a good time to buy stocks because they're going to go way back up. And then they did. And then Democrats accused him of, quote, insider trading by telling people to buy stocks low when they're expected to go back up high again. I mean, some people will say, well, you just trust him because he's Trump. No, I trust him because his judgment, because he proves to be correct over the critics like all the time, particularly when it comes to economic issues and dealing with other countries. And while it doesn't mean that he is going to be correct all the time and every time, when I look at the landscape and I look at what he says he believes is going to happen and his track record versus the people who say that, this is forever war and we're going to be paying $80 gas, and all this stuff. And then I look at their track record of accuracy and it's kind of a no-brainer. Just, you put it there on the ledger and you're like, okay, this is a winning team in terms of record and this one isn't. And so I'm not really panicked long term. I'd like for it to be over tomorrow. I hope it's not this way for a year. But then I think to myself, that we lived with gas prices higher than this during the Biden years, and the media just gave us a big old dose of, oh, well, there's nothing that can be done about it. That's just kind of the way it is. It's not that bad after all. Just downplaying it. And what I find humorous is when they reference that this is the highest they've been since 2023. And so the Biden years, and it's, you think, okay, so even with launching a war against Iran, that still hasn't caused a price spike at the pump as economically damaging as Joe Biden's presidency and policies did. UN top nuclear expert says airstrikes alone can't eliminate Iran nuclear program. This is a story in Just the News. One of the stated goals of the Israeli-U.S.-led conflict was to eliminate Iran's nuclear plan. The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog said Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium is likely to remain intact despite the intense bombardment of the country from Israel and U.S. forces. Quote, the program is a very vast program, said International Atomic Energy Director Rafael Grossi. At the end of this, the material will still be there. The enrichment capabilities will be there. We will have to go back to some form of negotiation. Now, he's making a prediction there that I don't agree with in terms of what it's going to look like when the war is over. But that aside, the important question here, and it has gotten so muddied up, and the media itself can't figure out what its narrative is when it comes to the nuclear capability question. And there's a bit of projection going on because the media, and this occurred yesterday with Tulsi Gabbard and noting how, the administration said they obliterated the nuclear enrichment capabilities. Yet here at the same time, they're saying that we've got to make sure that they don't have nuclear capabilities. This is a contradiction. It's not a contradiction. The same media that claims that is a contradiction is the same media that after we took out their nuclear enrichment facilities kept pulling on experts noting, well, yeah, that's fine and good, but we don't know where the enriched uranium is that already was enriched in those facilities. And utilizing that as evidence that, well, this doesn't denuclearize Iran. So in that moment, after taking out the facilities that enrich the uranium, in order to downplay the success and make it seem like a failure, the media was out there broadcasting that Iran still has nuclear capabilities because we don't know where that enriched uranium is. Now, there is some truth to that, in the sense that we really did not know, and intelligence indicated that they took about 10 briefcases filled with this stuff out of that facility, and we didn't really know exactly where it was, though we had some speculation. I mean, the problem is it's stuff that, I mean, some of the intelligence that they literally just had 10 different vehicles, all the same sort of vehicle, 10 different briefcase-size containers, and they just literally put them in the trunks, one in each car, and drove to different parts of the country in order to keep that enriched uranium spread out to make it more difficult for Israel or the United States to destroy or to capture. That is very important to understand, because that is the key to understanding this. And the lack of understanding it, some Democrats, I think, are ignorant and they just don't know this reality. But some are playing off of that lack of understanding of this. And arguably, the Trump administration, I believe, could do a better job of making people understand this. And I think part of the reason that they don't is because they are so in it, and it's such common knowledge and such an obvious fact to them, that they fail to realize that the average person doesn't know this in the country. And so the fact that they're not specifying, no, here's what is going on when it comes to our concerns and the nuclear capabilities of Iran, because they're not doing that, it looks like they're not answering the question, they're being evasive, but I think that they just believe, well, this is a given, people understand this, but they don't. What was taken out last year in that extremely successful bombing were the facilities that enrich the uranium, and the enriched uranium is what is needed in order to make the bombs. So it's like the ingredients factory. So let's say that, brownies. We decide that brownies are really bad. And there's a country that is developing brownies, and we want to make sure that they're not developing brownies anymore. And we know that over here they have a factory in which they get all of the ingredients together they don't make the brownies there at that facility, but that's where all the ingredients are gathered, they're put together. And so one thing, what we've got to do is we got to stop them from doing that first and foremost. Because if we don't stop them from doing that, then they're going to be able to make more and more and more brownies. And so then you take out the ingredient development factories, but you also know that a lot of those ingredients for the brownies, they've already shipped out, they have hidden in different areas, and you know that they still have the ability to make some brownies. Fortunately, you stopped the ingredient making factory, but they do have some ingredients. That's what we're dealing with here. So it is not a contradiction to have noted we took out their nuclear enrichment facilities while then contending there still are concerns that they could develop a nuclear weapon. That is not a contradiction. And I can all but guarantee you the vast majority of people don't understand that the different components involved there and how it is that we could successfully annihilate their ability to enrich the uranium, to create the ingredients, while, still those ingredients are out there, and that's the area of concern right now. And that isn't because of stupidity. That's because the media doesn't cover this very well. They don't explain it. And some of that is deliberate, and some of it, I can all but guarantee you, it wouldn't surprise me if over half the people writing news stories have no idea they have no concept of any of that. The unfortunate aspect of this is that information it's pretty black and white, and it is the lack of understanding is being weaponized against the United States by elected officials and media people in the United States. We're not talking about playing off the misunderstanding of the American people when it comes to capital gains taxes or some other domestic policy situation. We're talking about the use of disinformation against the United States when we are at war with a terrorist nation. And while they can run around all they want and talk about, well, I've got free speech to do it, does that mean you really want to? There are plenty of legitimate reasons to have discussions about how this is playing out without deliberately misleading people as to the reasons we're doing it. I want to play audio coming up of this, and this is going to be the real narrative today and until there's some new narrative about whose responsibility it is to declare that a country is an imminent threat. Because the stage has been set for the media and the Democrats to say, no, it's the CIA's responsibility. But Tulsi Gabbard, who's head, or I shouldn't say CIA, but the DNI overall, national intelligence. Is it intelligence or is it the president that makes that call? And yesterday, there was an attempt to get Tulsi Gabbard to declare what intelligence had declared when it comes to the imminent threat status. And she's like, no, that's actually the president's determination based off the evidence we give him. Now, they are framing it as, no, that's not true. And she is just denying it in order to protect President Trump. But this is a very important question, actually, to evaluate. So we'll have that next. I'm Nick Reed. All right, I want to. All right, this is audio yesterday. Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, and Senator John Ossoff, Democrat of Georgia, discussing the issue of imminent threat and whether Iran was or is, well, no longer, but was an imminent threat.
The White House stated on March 1st of this year that this war was launched and was, quote, a military campaign to eliminate the imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, end quote. That's a statement from the White House. Quote, the imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime. Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was an imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime?
The intelligence community assessed that Iran maintained the intention to rebuild and to continue to grow their nuclear enrichment capability.
Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, yes or no?
Senator, the only person who can determine what is and is not an imminent threat is the president.
False. This is the worldwide threats hearing where you present to Congress national intelligence, timely, objective, and independent of political considerations. You've stated today that the intelligence community's assessment is that Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated and that, quote, there had been no efforts since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. Was it the intelligence community's assessment that nevertheless, despite this obliteration, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
It is not the intelligence community's responsibility to determine what is and is not an imminent threat.
Okay.
That is up to the president
Here's the problem.
Based on a volume
no,
of
it is precisely
that he receives.
It is precisely your responsibility to determine.
All right, and so this goes back and forth, and that's essentially the tone of it. Now, this is actually a pretty interesting question, and to some degree, it is semantic. What Tulsi Gabbard is saying is like, listen, that isn't the decision. That's the decision of the president. We provide the factual information. We provide the intelligence, and we're like, here's what's going on. Here's what they're doing. Here's what they're saying. Here's how far advanced they are. Here's what the eyes and ears that we have on them are telling us that here is everything. And then the president is the one who takes all of that information and maybe even with advisors around him and makes the decision that this is an imminent threat. What is now being suggested, and this is going to be the Democrats are going to act like this is factual because it is something that they're framing as wrong with the Trump administration, that no, that's not true. It is the people in intelligence, the collective of people who gather the intelligence, the analysts. Now, of course, is that one person? Is that 1,000 people? We don't know the answer to that, but that's the declaration that is being made here. Mind you, the same, to some degree, culture that produced the 80-plus intelligence agencies claiming that the Hunter Biden laptop was just Russian information. It didn't even exist. This is the intelligence world that is supposed to determine, not the president of the United States, if it's an imminent threat. The reason that this is actually significant is because when it comes to the issue of war or military action, collectively, we have all pretty much concluded that the declaration of an imminent threat is actionable. There has yet to be anyone that I'm aware of on either side of the political aisle that says just because someone is an imminent threat doesn't mean that we should defend ourselves or we should attack them. This is, at this point, pretty settled. It is used as the point of contention. Were they an imminent threat? Were they an imminent threat? Anytime there's a discussion as to whether or not we should or should not launch military action, it is all predicated upon if it is an imminent threat. Understanding that context, that we as a nation and that both political parties and Washington, D.C. have determined that when something is or someone is an imminent threat, that means that we carry out military action. Is that something we want the elected president of the United States to make in terms of a determination, or is that something we want people within the intelligence community to make, whomever those people are, however many of those people are, and however it is that they eventually vote on it? Are there 1,000 of them? Does it take 2/3 of them to make that decision? Because remember, this isn't treated as just some sort of opinion. This is treated as the reason you go to war. And if we decide it's not the commander-in-chief who makes that decision, and not Congress, but it is faceless, nameless people in the intelligence community, then that means that all of this debate about who decides we go to war, Congress or the president, well, apparently it's just people in the intelligence community. They're the ones who make that decision. Now, I suspect faced with that reality, some would back off and say, well, no, that's not what we're saying. But that is what they're saying. Because their entire point here is if the intelligence community did not make that declaration, then that means that we should not have gone to war. So that is transferring the authority to execute military action away from any elected official. Forget the debate of Congress versus the executive branch, because suddenly we're now being told, no, it's the intelligence community that makes that decision. And I think that that's probably something most people don't want. Couple more hours ready to be unveiled. Next hour will be Sans Chrissy Fulnecki. She's, that whole spring break and kids and things, so she will not be joining us, but we will have our Author of the Week, as normal in the 8 o'clock hour, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. News coming up. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I am Nick Reed. Secretary of War Hegseth is speaking now as the Pentagon gives an update on our strikes in Iran, part of Operation Epic Fury. We're going to take that live.
It's not an imminent threat.
Okay.
That is up to the president
here's the problem.
based on a volume
no,
of
it is
information
precisely
that he receives.
It is precisely your responsibility to determine what constitutes a threat to the United States. This is the worldwide threats hearing.
It's not the first time senior administration officials have been at odds over the state of Iran's nuclear enrichment program.
They're not enriching right now.
If they've been enriching well beyond the number that you need for...
All right, actually, we've got the wrong audio feed coming in, so we'll see if we can switch that over here and carry that in progress. Thank you very much. Yeah, we have a different feed coming through there than I thought, and that feed wasn't carrying.
In the first months of the...
Nor is that. Okay. Kind of playing it by ear here, so Sarah's going to see if she can get it switched over there. Yeah, I think it talked in the last hour. I want to make a couple final thoughts on it, but this back and forth in which Democrats during the hearing were trying to get DNI Director Tulsi Gabbard to acknowledge that it is the intelligence community's decision as to whether a country is an imminent threat, while she said it is the president's. And we have determined in this country that if someone is an imminent threat, we go to war with them. We carry out military attacks. Thus far, that has not been in contention. That is the basis for debate over every military action virtually that we have taken in the modern era. Was there an imminent threat? And so what that means is the declaration of imminent threat is what dictates whether or not we take military action. And so the question as to whether or not that is the president that makes that declaration or some faceless, numerous analyst within the intelligence community has serious implications, because now you're determining who decides whether or not, who is it that pulls the trigger on military action. Unelected intelligence people, collectively, or the elected commander-in-chief, the president of the United States. I think whenever you really evaluate the implications of whom it is that we give that authority, most Americans across the political spectrum would feel more comfortable with having the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, making that decision, not a bunch of people that we don't even know who they are. People who, by the way, will disagree. The entire reason for this Kent guy, so he says, leaving, though we talked about that in the first hour and my suspicions there, was because he disagreed with the assessment. You're clearly going to have differing assessments within the intelligence community itself. So how is it that they ultimately make that decision? Is it some appointed person that overrides everyone? We know that during the previous administration, when there was analysis, or as far back as the the Obama administration, and whether or not Russians were trying to collude with Donald Trump, and all of that, the intelligence community had said there's no evidence of this whatsoever. But then you had Clapper come in and override them all, despite the fact that the actual analysts declared otherwise in terms of whether this was a serious threat to our country. So that position that the intelligence community is the one that should be making that decision, given our country's recognition that that is the determining factor as to war, is not something that should be just assumed to be the case at all. And I would argue it's probably not constitutional. I mean, clearly it's not. It would be a different situation if the context of imminent threat were much different. And as I said, there is a degree of semantics in there, because the reality is, even if the intelligence community does say, hey, in our assessment, this wasn't an imminent threat, it's still the decision of the President of the United States. That's part of what that duty is. That's part of the judgment. That is what the president does. Now, of course, and this is the unfortunate aspect of this, these hearings are not hearings to actually have these intellectual discussions and to come to some sort of intellectual conclusion as to what is going on, but it's all about harming Trump. And unfortunately, it doesn't simply harm Trump if they're successful. It harms our efforts to take on a terrorist regime when our men and women lives are at stake. And while politics, I think, in the minds of a lot of people, they recognize and understand, yep, politics are at play here. But is this really the arena you want to play the politics? Is this really the place that you want to diminish and reduce down to Republican and Democrat, to Trump as Hitler and a liar, when we've got all that is at stake? There's a piece in the Daily Caller, Republican leadership pushes back against public hearings over the Iran war. And it notes that Democrats have called for public hearings to examine whether Trump intends to take control of nuclear material, deploy U.S. troops to Iran, outline a strategy to end the war. The top two Republicans in Congress, Johnson, House Speaker, and John Thune, Majority Leader in the Senate, have pushed back on those demands. When you are in military engagement, as we are, it's a very serious thing. And I don't believe that a rubber stamp should be given. But the fact of the matter is, Congress does have a say in this, and that's funding. And this is just my belief. And this is an area of opinion. If you believe that we should not be doing this, and in your position of authority, you attempt to stop it, but you don't have the votes to do it. So you're in Congress, you're opposed to this, and so your role in it is defunding it, taking away the money so that the military action cannot be continued. And you fail at that, and there's nothing that you can do in order to stop the action. I don't believe at that point the right thing to do is then to continue to attack the action when doing so isn't going to stop it, but can only give aid and comfort to the enemy. Because at that point, the decision has been made. You have exercised what options you have to put a stop to it. You weren't able to, or you're not actually willing to. But so then what is the point at this point? What good will it do? Let's say even Democrats are completely genuine. They're not playing politics at all. They're seething blind hot rage at Donald Trump that turns them irrational, suddenly is suspended, and they are able to, with a level head, look and analyze at these situations. I mean, while we're in the middle of military action, does it really make any sense to bring the people in charge front and center in order to answer questions about our tactics, about our strategies, about what it is we're going to be doing next, about what our plans are for next? You know, that stuff is kept secret in a lot of capacities for a very specific reason. And to me, if you claim, well, I'm against the war, but of course I want there to be success, does that really scream you want success? If I'm in the minority of an effort, I'm on a group of people, a team, and we're debating whether or not to take on a project, and we have the vote, I have my say, and I lose on it, but I'm still part of the team and I care about the team, even though I didn't agree and want to be part of the effort, at that point, my responsibility is to be all in. Not to after the decision was made and I lost out on my ability to stop it from happening, to try and be a hindrance to it all the way along. We're going to go ahead and General Kane is giving an update on the war with Iran from the Pentagon. We're going to join that in progress.
Example for all of us. Now let me turn to an operations update. U.S. CENTCOM remains on plan to achieve our military objectives and remain unrelenting in our pursuit of Iranian missile capabilities, UAV capabilities, and their Navy, and as the Secretary said, their industrial base. Each day we continue to attack deeper into Iranian territory. As reported by U.S. Central Command yesterday, the U.S. military dropped 5,000-pound penetrator weapons into underground storage facilities, storing coastal defense cruise missiles and other support equipment. These weapons are bespokely designed to get through concrete and/or rocks and function after penetrating those barriers. We continue to hunt and kill mine storage facilities and naval ammunition depots. We continue to hunt and kill afloat assets, including more than 120 vessels and 44 mine layers, and the pressure will continue. We're flying further to the east now and penetrating deeper into Iranian airspace to hunt and kill one-way attack garrisons, destroying Iran's ability to project power outside of its borders. The A-10 Warthog is now in the fight across the southern flank and is hunting and killing fast attack watercraft in the Straits of Hormuz. In addition, AH-64 Apaches have joined the fight on the southern flank, and they continue to work on the southern side, and that includes some of our allies who are using Apaches to handle one-way attack drones. In Iraq, AH-64s have been striking against Iranian-aligned militia groups to make sure that we suppress any threat in Iraq against U.S. forces or U.S. interests. And we remain focused on pursuit of any platform that Iran could field to harm Americans or our partners. Last Friday, Admiral Cooper and the CENTCOM team conducted precision strikes against more than 90 targets on Karg Island, which included all of their military-only infrastructure, which included air defenses, naval base, mine storage, and deployment facilities. And as the Secretary mentioned, we continue to strike against Iran's defense industrial base and will continue to do so. Today, I want to continue my theme of talking about members of our incredible joint force. Today, I want to talk about some exceptional airmen who are engaged in the fight daily. United States Air Force.
All right,
Air
there,
Force
you're getting a bit of an update, and that's General Kane, their Joint Chiefs Chairman. Hegseth had spoken a bit earlier, and this is a Pentagon briefing that was giving a bit of an update when it comes to what's going on in Iran. I don't think there's anything major or any developments there. If we did miss them, of course, they will come up. We wanted to jump in case there was anything that was new for you. We'll skip our local news just because of the time frame. So if you want to give weather to everyone, that would be great.
Well, it's going to be nice. The first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 52. For your Friday, sunny with a high near 86. And for Saturday, sunny with a high near 87.
Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Springfield Livestock Marketing Center, man, they have always got something going on over there. Coming up this Saturday, March 21st, they will host a special cow and bull sale. They'll even have 25 longhorns at that sale. Now, if you want to see photos or videos of some of the cows and bulls that will be at this sale, check out their Facebook page, Springfield Livestock Marketing Center. Once again, that sale will be this Saturday, March 21st at 6 p.m. And if you want to do online bidding, make sure that you register beforehand so you'll be all squared away for that sale. They use DV Auction for all of their online bidding. That is my birthday. Do you think if I text Jeff or Andy over there, you think they'll give me a cow for my birthday? Maybe. It's worth a shot.
Yeah, you should get an alpaca, though.
I don't know if they do alpacas over there.
Well, maybe for your birthday.
Maybe.
They will.
I'll ask.
You can arrange that. Just why not?
Hey, no harm in asking, right?
They have nothing else going on. Surely someone.
Nothing. To check.
Yeah, maybe. I'll give you one. I'll just let you pick out one. Gift certificate. They should do that. Birthday gift certificates.
Yeah. I'm going to text him now.
Good plan.
To check out other upcoming sales, you can visit their website, springfieldlivestock.com. And of course, you can find all of their contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
The Greene County Commission has announced the selection process for an interim sheriff. Sheriff or not, Greene County is tapped to be a U.S. Marshal. Now, this, of course, is dependent on confirmation by the U.S. Senate. When that'll happen, who knows? I mean, Billy Long's still waiting to get his confirmation going. And if you have heard lately, they may be held up for a while, this Real ID thing, or not the Real ID, but the Save America Act, that, when you boil it down, just essentially has some plan in place to make sure that illegals aren't voting in our elections. So who knows how long this process will take. And I imagine it shouldn't be that difficult for him to get confirmed. I don't think that most Democrats are bigger fish to fry as opposed to some U.S. Marshal position. Could be wrong, but we'll see. But what happens in the meantime? So now he'll continue to hold his position as sheriff, and that's an elected position. This is a political position in that capacity. It's not like a police chief of a city that gets hired by the city and that is an employee of the city. The sheriff is that elected position that is law enforcement over the county, beholden to the people. But what happens if it gets vacated? Because you can't have no one in that position during that period of time. The Greene County Commission they have a play in this, and in terms of filling that gap during whatever period of time, that is something that they are going to be taken care of. And this is Missouri law that gives the responsibility of filling the vacancy with the county commission. Under law, whenever the office becomes vacant for any reason, the county commissioner shall fill the vacancy by appointment. This is state law. The law further requires that the commission act no later than 14 days after the vacancy occurs. So, there's a little bit of a window of time there. I suppose that if it is unexpected, this, however, is not going to be an unexpected vacancy. So that's why the process is already being announced. That way, from the moment that vacancy occurs, they can go ahead and plug someone in there until the following election in which the people will decide. Now, here's the interesting thing of it. And there's a timing issue here. If R0 gets approved through the Senate and then this position vacates, enough time before the election of that position, then there will be a placeholder if you want. I shouldn't call it a placeholder because that'd be the sheriff that'll be appointed by the Greene County Commissioners. But then the people will have a vote in November on this position, which I didn't even realize that this race was up in November. I guess it is, which is why some of this comes into play. Now, if the vacancy occurs after March 17th, which was a couple of days ago, things get changed up a little bit here because how does this usually occur? Because this is an elected position, it has a primary, right? And this is a political party scenario. And so in November, you'll have this person running as a Democrat, this person running as a Republican, this person running as an independent, as a libertarian, should there be people from those parties. Well, just like any other election, there's a primary for that. The deadline, the primary filing window, apparently closed March 17th, which means that, let's say it happened that the vacancy occurred today. And that means, okay, there's going to be an election for that position in November. There will be a primary in August. But the problem is it's too late for people to file as candidates to run in the primary. So what happens? The political parties' county committees, not the commissioners, but the committees that are made up of citizens that run to be on those committees, they will handpick the candidate, which a lot of people would argue that's really the way it should be done in the first place anyhow. It's the way it was done once upon a time, that the political parties, they would interview people who wanted to run under their banner, and instead of having this primary system in which the government uses taxpayer funds to let people vote, so that, that's how the party decides, that back in, the day, the political parties, people would say, hey, I'm going to run. I'd like to run as a Republican, or I'd like to run as a Democrat. And they'd be like, okay, pitch yourself to us because we're the ones who decide who gets to run under our banner. And then that's the way it's. So that's how it will play out. Now, depending on your perspective and where you fall in terms of the political party, this is either a good thing or a bad thing. If you are hardcore establishment and this would be Greene County, but whatever county you're in for a scenario like this, if it's full of establishment people, then you're going to feel pretty comfortable. All right, they're going to pick an establishment person. If you're more of MAGA, and you're dealing with establishment people, this is probably not a scenario that will please you too much. But if you're MAGA, and you got MAGA people on the committee. And so I think that that's something that's going to be really interesting to watch play out with the current makeup, because it got kind of a mixture of people that are on the Greene County committee, and what that will look like if that vacancy does come into play in terms of timing. And it's a pretty big window right now to where they will be deciding and the Democrats too, deciding who's going to run as a Democrat. And outside of that, if a person does want to run as an independent, then there is a petition process that is provided by law in which the person can do that. Now, there are some requirements, not just to apply, but to actually get elected. Under Missouri law, you can't be convicted or have pled to a felony. Got to be a U.S. citizen. I know Democrats probably is quite problematic for them. Must possess a valid peace officer license. Must be a resident, taxpayer, registered voter of Greene County. Must have resided in Greene County for more than 1 year. Must be a person capable of efficient law enforcement, and must not be delinquent in the payment of any state income taxes, personal property taxes, municipal taxes, or real property taxes. If you want to apply for the appointment prior to the election, you can go to appointment at, or you submit a resume to appointment for interim sheriff checklist at appointment at greenecountymo.gov. And the checklist is available on the Greene County homepage at greenecountymo.gov under the interim sheriff selection process section. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 52. For your Friday, sunny with a high near 86. And taking a look at Saturday, sunny skies with a high near 87.
Referencing the SAVE Act earlier, somebody had texted in the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. The SAVE Act is not to prevent illegals from voting. It's to prevent non-citizens from voting. Non-citizens are a much broader category than illegals. When you use the term illegals, you're playing right into the Democrat talking points. They're trying to minimize it. Actually, I think they're the ones that are trying to, in fact, they don't even like to use the term illegal. The SAVE Act is trying to make sure that only individuals that are legally allowed to vote are allowed to do so, of which a huge category, of course, are illegals. And that is the category, though, that concerns the Democrats the most. That's why they're not funding Homeland Security right now, because one of their primary concerns is that ICE and Border Patrol might show up at some of these polling places for the purposes of detecting illegals, specifically, obviously not legal people in this country, though they may not be citizens. And so while, yes, we do clearly want to make sure that only people who are legally allowed to vote in this country, a huge chunk, and really the chunk of greatest concern is those that are in the country illegally. But again, using the term illegal, I don't think that is playing into the Democrats' hands, given that they're the ones that are constantly, in fact, declaring that you can't say illegal alien. They're undocumented immigrants. And of course, we're going to watch all that play out. I've noticed Thune's language on this, if you've noticed it, is signaling what that he does not have any intent of Democrats pushing this through to actually become reality. Because on a number of occasions in this really stern way, saying, we're going to use this to make sure that Democrats go on record. That's right. You just wait. We're going to force the Democrats to go on record as to why it is they're opposed to securing our elections. He is setting the framework to declare failure a victory. What I believe this looks like is Thune recognizing that they have no intent to push this through by way of an actual filibuster, forcing Democrats to keep yammering on until they collapse from exhaustion, thereby allowing a vote which requires only a majority to vote in favor of making it law or going to the president's desk so he signs it. He knows that that's not the case. So what he's doing is he's out there preemptively saying, oh, no, what we're doing is we're going to make Democrats go on record. That way, when they fail to get it to become law, he can say, no, I mean, look, we forced them to get out there and tell the American people where they stood. So he can declare victory in that context, when in fact it's a tremendous loss for the American people. An unspoken aspect of this, while so many of us focus on just push through the actual filibuster, just activate the actual filibuster, utilize that until Democrats give up, so only a majority of votes are needed because Republicans control the Senate. And so you don't have to have 60 votes. You don't have to. You just have to have 50 plus 1. And the dirty little secret here is that there's a belief that there aren't enough Republicans to actually support it to get it to a simple majority. And this is John Thune protecting those Republicans from their own constituents. That if you, even though Republicans have the majority, and then even losing a few of them, if you come down to a 50-50, J.D. Vance is the tiebreaker, that there are enough Republicans that are against securing the vote. That if it really came down to a vote in which only a majority is needed, that the Republicans wouldn't have those votes. And they recognize how devastating that would be going into a general election for any Republican to have sided with Democrats against simply making sure that only people who are allowed to legally vote. Something as basic as that 80+% of American support. And that's the reason that they don't want there to be a vote to take place. And while there may be, just throw out a number, let's say there's 10. I mean, there have been some that have identified many more Republicans than that as actually being opposed to that in the Senate. But let's just say the number is 10. Well, Thune could get away with, or, let's say there's 10 that are actually against it, get away with allowing a lot of them to vote for it as long as there's not enough for a majority. But then you have to pick, okay, which Republicans are going to go ahead and side with the Democrats to tank it. Some of them are obviously Murkowski, and she's not up for re-election. So she'd be one of them. Generally speaking, Susan Collins is a Republican that sides with Democrats, but she's facing re-election in what Democrats are focusing on as a potential seat change. So she would, be in real trouble potentially if she went that route. And so suddenly, it becomes very difficult to find those Republicans that will go ahead and be the no votes in order to tank securing the vote in the Senate. So when you look at the whole landscape and the different layers of potential reasons why this isn't going to happen, they're all a really bad look at the Republican Party. And the reality of it is when you look at why this isn't happening and all the different reasons it isn't happening, and we love to just keep throwing blame on the Democrats and, it's because the Democrats don't want this. There's more to it than that. There are enough Republicans that just don't want it. Yeah, they also don't want to actually have to utilize a filibuster because they are lazy and they don't want to hassle with that, and that's just too much work for them. That does come into play. But even beyond that, the dirty little secret is that there's some Republicans that don't want this to happen. Excuse me. And I think for a lot of Americans, particularly Republican voters, that's a difficult pill to swallow. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com for all of your home loan needs. It's the combination of the sleekness and efficiency of top-notch website portal to get the process started, married to the local folks that are there, that are accessible, that know you by face, know you by name. You go to iwantagreathomeloan.com, and oftentimes when you see a website that works really well, very functional, the better it is, the further detached you are from actual humans. But that's not the way with iwantagreathomeloan.com. You see right up there on the website, top left-hand corner, Alex Carricker, his cell phone number, and Anthony Carricker and his cell phone number. And 7 days a week, they are accessible, even during the weekends. That's just the difference you get in terms of that personal dedication and touch, as opposed to even, your hometown bank you've been with forever, and you just know those people, they know you by name. You think on Sunday you're going to get, you're going to be able to call them and get some information. No, doesn't work that way. It's just an area where the characters and the team have really made great efforts to differentiate themselves and be a cut above so many of the rest. Your home loan needs refinancing, reverse mortgages. I want a great homeloan.com, because you do. I suspect today there is going to be a degree of audio played during the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee meeting when it comes to the confirmation to lead Department of Homeland Security, Senator Mullins of Oklahoma, particularly with Rand Paul. And Rand Paul and Mark, they don't like each other. They don't care for each other. Part of the reason that Rand Paul doesn't care for Mullen is because, as you may recall, Rand Paul's neighbor, or somebody that shared a property line with him, was some sort of anti-Trump left-wing nut job, and one day just typical nature of people on the left, lost control of themselves. And I think Rand Paul was mowing his lawn, and he went and savagely beat the guy till he was hospitalized. This wasn't just a sucker punch and then a walk away. The guy beat so relentlessly Senator Rand Paul because of political beliefs. He was hospitalized. He broke ribs. He had to have part of his lung removed. This was not a couple of stitches we're talking about. This is massive internal injuries that required part of his lung to be removed. By the way, the guy got a slap on the wrist, because of course he did. And because Senator Mullen didn't care for something Rand Paul was doing, had said that he understood why somebody would do this to Rand Paul. Now, Mullen, I'm not even going to play the audio because I think the whole thing's yucky. Just don't like it. I think it's unnecessary. Mullen, for his part, apparently he doesn't like Rand Paul because he said Rand Paul accused him of lying about something. Now, my personal opinion is I think that of the grievances, Rand Paul has a little more reason. I mean, the guy was hospitalized because he's so brutally beaten, and Mullen's like, oh yeah, that guy was justified in doing it, versus being accused of lying about something as a politician. I'm not saying that that's right. I don't even know the circumstances of it, but that's kind of one of those things that occurs when you are an elected official. You get accused of being a liar. I don't know that those are necessarily on the same page as one another. I don't even know whether this means that he is or isn't qualified. I can understand the argument that should somebody who has that lack of temperament or judgment regarding a fellow human being who was beaten until he was hospitalized head up the Department of Homeland Security, I think that's a legitimate question. And maybe a legitimate answer is, hey, we need someone who's tough in there. Buck up a little bit. The part about it to me, though, that I just find a little bit surprising is how many Republicans and Republican voters were not only okay with what he said, but sort of mocking Rand Paul for having a problem with it, when we have spent years differentiating Republicans from Democrats based off of Democrats supporting and praising violence against their political opposition. And noting that any time there's, cheering on political violence, whether it's attacking ICE or shooting Charlie Kirk or, just any sort of political violence, that it's always people on the left that cheer it on. It's always people on the left. And then to have it so openly done, to cheer on an attack so brutal against Rand Paul that he's hospitalized, and suddenly be like, oh, quit whining about it. I just kind of like, well, wait a minute here. I thought Republicans were the ones who didn't do that. And Rand Paul's of the same political party. They're not even talking about the opposition. Though to some Republicans he is, because he's not part of the establishment. But nor is Donald Trump. That's the other part of this that I find just a little bit, and I don't know. I just look at these things differently than a lot of people. Trump nominated Mullen, likes him. So a lot of Trump people are poo-pooing Rand Paul on this one. And they cheer Mullen when Mullen points out how often Rand Paul fights against the GOP. Well, isn't that how Donald Trump got elected? That he wasn't part of the Mitt Romney, John McCain, John Thune, John Boehner, Paul Ryan, that he wasn't part of that he was the one guy that would stand up when it wasn't popular against the Republican Party, but now Rand Paul deserves to be trashed on because he is the same? It's just a lot of contradictions there that concern me. But it's a fleeting moment. Hopefully, it isn't part of an evolution of the personality of the Republican Party, because it has been pretty consistently one of the great differentiators between the left and the right in this country, and that is the right has always been opposed to praising and calling for violence, whereas the left has monopolized that, and I'd really hate for that difference to go away. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. You got a home to buy, you got a home to sell. You know someone who does. There's only a certain likelihood that you are going to be in the market to do so in the next week or the next month, but the odds that you know someone who is going to, somebody that trusts you, someone that you care about, that is probably of greater likelihood. And as people seek out these individuals, and they oftentimes go to social media to ask, hey, who do you know, who's good? And then in the comments, there's 80 different names that are thrown out there, and you realize, well, this really didn't help. It's just random names. You can let them know. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. And whether it's through your own experience or my experience, Sarah's experience, or directing them to people who have publicly on Zillow, on social media, Google reviews have talked about their experiences with Emily Johnson. And it's going to be one of the best recommendations you can make for someone you care about. Home buying, home selling, Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. I can't imagine having to go to these confirmation hearings. And yesterday, Homeland Security, Oklahoma Senator Mullen. You've got Senator Slotkin, Democrat of Michigan, one of the senators who openly not just encouraged but told troops it was their duty to defy orders, if they didn't agree with them. Ask Mullen who won the 2020 election. Are you honestly going back to this? This is below bare minimum. The pathetic nature of questions that Democrats ask, it is so subjuvenile. We got to find out if you're an election denier because that clearly matters to anyone. A woman who, again, openly encouraged active members of the military to defy orders if they didn't like them, is concerned as to whether or not the next director of Homeland Security recognizes that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. I wish these Republicans would just start answering the auto pin every time that question gets asked. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everyone, welcome. My name is Nick Reed, author of the week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. Fantastic folks there. That is coming up here in mere moments. Ozarks elder law, very important part of your life, important part of your death, important part of being incapable of making decisions for yourselves or for your loved ones. Tons of misconceptions out there. A lot of conventional wisdoms that aren't actually lined up with reality. As laws change, every state's different. People think because of common sense and television shows that if your spouse, what was one of the things we heard about, like what was the reason for gay marriage for so long? It was, well, because, otherwise you can't make a medical decision for your spouse. You don't have that ability to do so if you're not married. Being married, depending on the state you're in, does not, by default, give you the ability to make medical decisions for your husband or spouse. Oftentimes, hospitals, they will defer to you to make the decisions, but it ultimately is not your say unless you have all that stuff legally documented and taken care of. You probably didn't know that unless you, of course, listened to Lori Rook talk about it or heard me mention it in the context of Ozarks elder law. There's a lot more, too, when it comes to transferring your property to loved ones before you pass, after you pass, nursing home care, how to pay for it, all of these things. You need the experts on your side. Consultation to find out what you need to do. It's free. You reach out, set up a consultation, 10 area locations. They'll give you a bit of a little worksheet and say, all right, well, here's when we're going to meet. Bring these things. This is what we need in terms of documents. And then we're going to go over that and let you know what you need to do. There is no cost to that. That is a courtesy to you. And then they'll let you know what it cost in order to make sure you and your family's secure. OzarksElderLaw.com. If you forget it, you start looking it up. You're like, is this the right? I forgot. I think I know what it is. Just go to KSGF.com. Under Nick's endorsements, you can find it there. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 52. For Friday, sunny with a high near 86. And for Saturday, sunny with a high near 87.
I'm Nick Reed. It is Thursday, which means it's time for Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. And our author today is Jay Young, lifelong passion for the oil and gas business. Family has been in the business more than 100 years, the founder of King Operating Corporation. And his book is The Upside of Oil and Gas Investing, how the new model works and why it puts the traditional model to shame. And we'll get to some of that in a minute. And that's when you're really going to have to shift and probably talk to me like I'm 5 years old. But I do want to get your thoughts on the landscape now. Obviously, gas prices are up. I think that your industry is probably one of the single most misunderstood industries that exist. One, everyone utilizes it, so everyone sort of has a sense and feeling about it. When there is an impact or some sort of ripple effect out of your industry, everyone feels it, yet people are so vastly lacking in knowledge about what causes those things oftentimes. And obviously what's going on with Iran right now, there are these, well, it's, just an upswing. And so what do you think of the landscape? I'm sure you hear these questions all the time, like, how long is this going to last? And is there anything that can be done about it?
Right, Nick, and I appreciate that. And I'll tell you right now, I don't know. I mean,
Right.
I don't. You never know the next step for Trump, and maybe that's the reason why why he's President Trump. I don't know, but you don't know. And I'll tell you the one thing that I do know, and I do know that the longer that this war lasts, the higher oil and gas prices are going to go up, unfortunately. And that's the price he's having to pay right now, and that's the price that he's I'm sure it keeps him up at night, because he was all about the drill baby drill and lowering gasoline prices for the American people. I mean, he does care. He does want, he does not want higher gasoline prices. He wants everybody to be able to drive at $2, $3 gas. But there is a tremendous amount of demand, for oil. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges right now, is because there is so much demand for gasoline, for oil, that we're going to see all these, prices go up, especially when you have disruption, or you have, like the Strait of Hormuz, 20% of all oil goes through this area, and they're shutting it down. So not only do you shut it down to where you're not delivering 20% of the oil around the world, but you're also having, countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, or not necessarily Iran, who cares, but Iraq and all these others, because they're shutting down their production, because if they can't transport it, they're not going to keep producing it at these high rates if they can't send it over and get sold. So oil is different than natural gas. And, if there's a disruption in Saudi Arabia all the way over there, because people ask me that, they go, well, now why does a tanker getting through the Strait of Hormuz have to do with me paying $15 more at the pump? That's a good question, but oil is a global commodity, so any disruption anywhere causes oil prices to go up or go down if we have a supply problem.
Do you know what sort of time frame? Let's say tomorrow, bam, opened up, full people, the companies felt secure. All right, we're safe to have this flowing through there again. How long does that take to be felt at the pump, that relief?
Yeah, it would take like a week, because, well, and two, it's kind of like a stock, stock going down. Is it really over?
Sure.
When it's over, and they may go, okay, yeah, it's over, but a way a country, I don't know. If a country says it's over, if Iran says, yep, hey, we're done, here's all our nuclear missiles, we're not going to do this ever again, we're sorry, we want to have world peace, does that really matter? Is it really the truth? Because you don't know. And that's why I think crude prices are going to stay up for a long period of time. They're not going to drop back down to the 60s, 70s. We're not going to have $2 gas. I remember seeing $1.92 for regular gasoline, in December, January this year,
Yeah.
A couple of months ago, and I don't think we're going to see that for a long time because of this volatility, which is what we're seeing today, and you don't know, and you can't count on it.
We're talking with our author of the week, Jay Young. The book is The Upside of Oil and Gas Investing. Is this good for the industry itself? You have people just on the surface and they say, well, gosh, the cost of the price of the product goes up. So those that do have it available to sell, they come out ahead. Is that how it works, or is that a misunderstanding of the system?
Oh, no, it's really good for the industry when prices go up, but not too far. Remember Billy Bob Thornton in Landman? I mean, he said $78 a barrel is perfect. It's not too high, it's not too low. We're looking for a rig right now to go drill some wells up in the Panhandle of Texas, and the price is like $19,000 or about $20,000 a day, let's say. $20,000 a day. We're going by yards, a yard where there's rigs and there's 2-3 rigs stacked, and they're ready to go to work. Well, $20,000 a day. Well, if prices go to 80, 100, 120, and they stay there for a certain amount of time, maybe 30, 60 days, there will be no rigs in that yard, and you'll pay $25,000, $30,000, $35,000 a day. That's why I've been saying for the last year, now's the time to get a rig, and let's sign it up long term, get a year contract, 2-year contract on these rigs, because you want these rigs at $15,000 a day, and you want to drill it when it costs you. Just to let you know, there's as many companies that it takes to drill and complete an oil and gas well as it does to build a house, pretty much. I mean, there's all different kinds of companies that we have to deal with. 70, 80 companies to drill and complete a well. To build a house, it may be more than that, but not many more,
right,
because you need roof, you need, stairs, carpet, all the other things. And when you go to work, everybody's like, okay, well, I sold 80% of my pipe to that one company. That 20% I'm going to hold on to, I'm just going to keep it back here, and I'm going to charge, $50 a foot. I sold all the rest of it at $30. I'll keep this at $50 a foot because the demand is there, and people want to go drill. Well, I've been saying, let's go drill a well at $8 million today. So when prices do go up, which has always been my speculation, hypothesis, whatever, I feel like prices are going to go up. Not because we're going to have a war, but because, number one, the demand's still there for oil. We need oil. It's going to be there. Number two, oil and gas companies have not been drilling for oil. They just don't drill for oil. That's not what they do when prices are at $50, $60. And number three, the wells that they have online are going to decline. So when we need the oil in the summertime into this year, we're not going to have it. And when we don't have it, we're going to pay more for it. That's just the way it is. That's why I've been saying for the last year, let's get some long-term contracts. Let's sign up some completion crews, pipe, frack. Let's just get everything ready because the price is going to go up. We're in a cycle. 4 generations of this myself. I was around with my grandfather. He passed away before I was 8, but he was in the oil business. And my grandfather, I've seen a lot of cycles in this business, and this is what happens. Now, this is what happens.
Well, and I don't know if, for whatever reason, I haven't panicked at all over there. I would say, yeah, this is what happens. I've kind of been as a consumer through these cycles before. I didn't know if you think that perspective is one that's just, I don't know, trying to ignore the problem, or is it for you? You said your family, 100 years, been involved in this industry. Is this, it's just a snowstorm. These things happen, and it too will pass. Is that your perspective?
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And it just cycles and things that you'll see. Last summer we we're experiencing some really great, when people were driving, they could drive, to Montana instead. If you're from Texas, they could drive to Montana for summer vacation instead of stopping in New Mexico because the price was cheaper. But it's cycles, and what happens is that. So right now, I feel like the cycle's done. We're going to have a good 3 to 5 year run for oil and gas projects, the investment side, but I'm afraid you're going to pay more at the pump, coming up, all because of the cycles.
You mentioned Landman, clearly a popular show. Is that accurate? I mean, is that what it's like? Do you watch that and think finally somebody nailed this, or do you sort of roll your eyes at some of the dramatization?
Well,
well, sure.
The old business, obviously. I mean, there's women out there like her, well, for sure. I mean, and it. I mean, are you saying there's a lot of drama with oil and gas and people and there's it's like a feast or famine with guys that are, not even educated, making $100,000 or $200,000 a year, working, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Mama's making, or maybe 6 days a week, but Mama's got the money and he's got the big truck and 100%. I grew up with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I look at that and go, and it's kind of like I grew up, but some of the stuff is obviously Hollywood and blown up a little bit, with all the different things that go on. But no, I think it's a great show. It gives people some perspective into what happens in the oil and gas game. And I think it's really good. And I look forward to the next season coming out in November.
We're talking with our author of the week, Jay Young. The book is The Upside of Oil and Gas Investing, How the New Model Works, Why It Puts the Traditional Model to Shame. And before we let you go, I just do want to ask, the book, who's it for? Is it for people who are already in the game and this is a different perspective, or is it someone like me who has no concept whatsoever of what investing in oil and gas looks like, and it's a great sort of, hey, if you as the average Joe want to get involved in this is what it looks like?
Well, good question, Nick. And I'll tell you what, I wrote the book because people just think the oil business is the oil business, and they get a phone call. They get a phone call from some phone jockey, that just sitting there thinking, okay, hey, it's the oil business. And so they invest and they lose all their money and they think, this isn't good. And you don't talk to many people that have had the experience of investing in oil and gas and making money. That's just not what investors have done in the past. And so, and there's 1,000 reasons why, and it's all in my book, which I don't know how far you want me to go into it right now, but the big reason and what I'm doing is I'm allowing accredited investors, you have to be accredited, worth $1 million or make $200,000 a year. But I'm telling these investors that there's a different way to invest in oil and gas. You get 100% write-off. There's monthly income, 15 to 20% monthly income while we scale the investment. And I have a lot of experience with what we do in regards to investing and finding projects, and we don't take risk. We're not exploring. We're participating in wells where we already know the wells, like we're drilling in Ochiltree County, Texas, which is like 5 wells we're going to drill this year, if not 10 or 15, and there's been 7,000 wells drilled out there. So we know basically where the oil is and isn't, so we're not taking risks. And that's the way that investors, it's hitting singles and doubles. It's the tortoise in the hare instead of trying to hit the big one. Because if you try to hit the big one in this business, all you'll get is a write-off. All oil and gas projects have write-offs, and that's what attracts people to oil and gas investing, is that write-off, with the hope of, I don't want to pay the IRS. And the IRS allows you to do it, so we take advantage of it. My family does too with this, but we want a good deal. And so I wrote the book because I'm like, I'm going to have Forbes be the publisher. I'm going to go out. I'm going to tell as many people as I can. I do these great shows like yours, Nick, because I want people to know, hey, you know what? It's a risky game, but if you want a fair shot at making money in the oil and gas business, either, look at my website, King Operating. I'll send you a free copy of my book. But just be careful, because there are a lot of people out there that they're just salespeople, and that's all they talk about, the sales side of the business. They don't talk about how can you make money. Now they hope you make money, but they don't have a clue about what they're doing in the oil and gas game. And so we've got a full staff here. I've got a great number of people in our geophysicists, geologists, landmen. We just got out of our meeting. And some of the things that we're talking about right now, I talked about just a few minutes ago in our operations meeting we have on the mornings, and just talking about, we're drilling a well right now. We got gas flares. We're drilling in a zone that looks exceptionally well. And we're just looking forward to our investors receiving the checks that they're receiving checks right now on 14 wells that's in the fund. We're going to close our fund down pretty pretty soon. But until then, man, we do have a good, a good idea of institutional. How can the regular investor invest like an institutional investor? You always hear, well, if you're a family office, you get involved in this deal, it's $5 million. I bring those kind of deals to the average investors. Our positions are 200,000. You could do a half, if you want to find out if you want to do business with us later on or not. I mean, and we just bring institutional investing to the accredited investor that wants to get in and think about, hey, I like landman. I like the returns. Our returns are 30-40% internal rate of return at $70 oil. We're not counting on this $100, $150 oil, but if you can make 40% at $70, if it goes to 100 or 150, there's going to be a lot better returns for the investors out there. And that's kind of what I wrote about in the book, and that's kind of how I set it up.
Well, I appreciate your time this morning. Interesting and timely stuff, as I guess energy always is in some capacity or another. Our author of the week, Jay Young. Again, the book, The Upside of Oil and Gas Investing, How the New Model Works and Why It Puts the Traditional Model to Shame, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. For Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 80. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 52. For your Friday, sunny with a high near 86. And taking a look at Saturday, sunny with a high near 87. And Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air, as you just heard, the next couple of days are going to be pretty warm, which means that you'll be switching on the AC if you haven't done so already. If you switch it over and you hear loud bangs or pops, maybe it's just louder than normal, or you experience that worst case scenario. It's just blowing warm. It's not even cool. I want to recommend Russell and his crew over at Foreman Mechanical. They are so incredibly nice and helpful, and they're not pushy either. If you are in a situation where you would rather repair versus replace, they are going to work with you. But that being said, if you are ready to upgrade your unit, they can help you out with that too. So if you experience AC issues over the next couple of days, call Russell. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Those out there who believe the reason that we went to war against Iran is because Israel talked us into it, coaxed us into it, tricked us into it. You share company with the ladies of The View, just if you were wondering what intellectual brain trust you're part of. They had a CNBC host on with them. I think this was yesterday's program, and they're going on about it's all because of Israel, and the CNBC host was like, that really actually, there's a lot to criticize here, but that's not true. And they're like, well, of course it is. Whatever makes you sleep at night. Okay, that's a solid argument. This continues to just astound me, given the fact that at one of the videos that circulates out there is Trump on the campaign trail saying, I will bomb the blank out of Iran. It's juxtaposed to Biden and Harris on separate occasions being asked, what do you say to Iran that wants to continue to develop nuclear weapons, or that are going to do this or that? And it's Kamala Harris, don't. And then Joe Biden asks the same question, what do you say as president of the United States? Don't. And then it goes to Trump, and he's like, I'll bomb the blank out of them. It's at a campaign rally. It's not some secret audio where he was talking to big donors. He says it at a campaign rally that's surrounded by Trump supporters, and they're all cheering that he says this. This is well before he was president of the United States. There's video of him from the 80s talking about the need to do this sort of thing in terms of dealing with Iran. It's just, even taking out Soleimani during the first administration, it's as if some people, I understand people on the left because they're always in the moment, the anti-Trump moment. Some of the people that are traditionally, I voted for Trump, but, I'm not going to support doing whatever Israel wants us to do. Did you just wake up? Did you miss the part where he talked about doing this sort of thing when he was running for president? Where were you during this period of time? Because it happened. This wasn't a secret. And that's not to say that Trump was declaring officially, hey, if I get elected, I'm guaranteeing you I'll do this. But you can't claim that this wasn't something that he had thought about, was a potential that we might need to do until he got reelected. And then all of a sudden Israel was like, hey, by the way, we're going to do this. And he's like, well, I guess we have to do it too. I do understand a lot of the confusion comes out of the timing and the logistics And the fact that this was a plan that was decided, it was determined that this was going to happen a lot. And believe me, when this is all said and done, I believe the amount of planning that went into this ahead of time is going to be looked at in astonishment by people. Just the level of planning on this. I believe we are going to find out things that were very significant occurred behind the scenes and under the radar that we will learn occurred that we had a hand in making happen. I also believe that what is yet to happen in terms of a future government, while the Trump administration is playing this, hey, you know, kind of what happens, and this is up to the Iranian people, that we are without doubt involved and have plans. Maybe not one exact plan, but a number of potential plans. But we don't want to be seen as being responsible for whatever the Iranian government is, because Trump is smart enough to recognize how that can be used against whatever the next regime is. There's recognition that, you know, once Iran gets back in the hands of people who want it the way that it was before the Islamic terrorists took it over, that there will be terrorists that try to carry out terrorist attacks, that try to destabilize, that these things are obviously going to be happening. And if whomever ends up in charge of Iran is seen as being put in place or chosen by the Trump administration, that is a information war that will be played by the terrorists. These aren't Iranians; these are just Americans pretending to be Iranians. That they're puppets of the Americans. And the Trump administration, Trump specifically, he knows and understands the importance of perception. More than anyone on the world stage, he understands it. And so this insistence that, you know, the American people deserve to know exactly what this is going to look like when it's over, not if it works against us. If it is going to make it more difficult or reveal much of our hand that is helping craft what the final outcome is going to look like, Trump's smart enough to know that publicly talking about that could make it more difficult for that peaceful outcome. He's not going to do that. Even though the result might be the ability of enemies domestically portraying him as he doesn't even have a plan. He doesn't even know what's going on. Anyone who knows Trump knows that Trump always has an outcome in mind, always has a contingency plan. This is how Trump operates. It doesn't mean you have to love the guy, but this idea, there's this presentation that he just, and some of this is, I'm telling you, it's deliberate. He uses to his advantage the underestimation of opponents who believe that he's not meticulous in planning, that he is not playing the, four-dimensional chess, as it's oftentimes referred to, that presentation of him just going on the fly and just acting erratically, he utilizes that to his advantage. And he will continue to do that. It's all part of what makes him a success when it comes to getting a lot of this stuff done. And when you understand how he operates, the idea that this guy suddenly, that even his enemies have long characterized as this guy's out of control and he won't listen to anyone, suddenly, for whatever reason, he decided to get us into a war because Israel drug us into it. Like, none of that even computes. It's inconsistent with everything he said in the past. It is inconsistent with every way that he has ever operated. It is inconsistent with the way that his opponents have characterized him, oftentimes accurately. The confusion in terms of the logistics of things, again, is this is something that's been in the plan for a very long time. And at the same time, Israel had their play in it and recognized that, okay, well, I think what we're going to find out post all of this, there were very defined roles. Israel was going to have some very defined roles, and the United States was going to have some very defined roles, and then there would be some overlapping of those roles. And I think it's becoming increasingly clear, largely because of the intelligence that they have had on the ground for a very, very, very long time and their success in infiltrating even inner circles in Iran, when it comes to kind of tracking down on an on-the-ground level, that's where the Israelis have come into play. And so part of that was they suddenly, as the United States is ramping up and getting everything into place in order to start this thing, found this massively golden opportunity where all of these people were together. Now, interestingly enough, the reason they were all together, which was the reason that Israel took advantage and took that first airstrike, was because it was the day before the deadline Trump put into place. Remember Trump said they have 10 days? And then it was noted, wait a minute, these strikes launched on day 9. He said there were 10 days. Well, it was because on day 9, because day 10 was around the corner, that all of the top leaders got together to talk about what are we going to do. When you look at this happened because of this happened because of this happened, and the simplistic look of, oh, well, Trump decided to go ahead and execute this war because Israel carried out a strike killing their top leadership. The reason they carried out that strike was because they were all together because of Trump's deadline. So even when you look at the simplistic approach of, oh, well, we did this because they did this, well, they did the thing because of what Trump did. Which, if you notice, Trump actually said, if anything, I drug them into this. If anything, I prompted them to act. That's what he was referencing. To say that, I mean, not to belabor the point, but I think to Venezuela and how everyone was like, oh my gosh, why did this just happen suddenly? And they said it was the weather. That it just turned out the weather was perfect and all these things fell into place, and so that's what pulled the trigger on it. Now, do we believe that the weather is what made us decide to go in and capture Maduro? Do we believe that Donald Trump decided because the weather told him to do this, that that's why we took that action? No. The decision was made. It just so happened the triggering point occurred because of perfect conditions. And that's the same thing with the situation in Iran and Israel. It was going to happen. It just so happened the triggering point occurred because this perfect lineup of the stars occurred because of Trump's 10-day deadline, in which everyone got together and Israel's like, we can take them out now. Okay, go ahead and do it. This is the time we're going to start it because it makes sense. When you look at the reality of it and you understand how Trump operates and everything, it shows us that the idea Israel is the one who called the shots and drug us into this is in no way, shape, or form lined up with reality. It's just not. That's not a pro-Trump thing or an anti-Trump thing. That's not a pro-Israel thing or anti-Israel thing. That's just the facts. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company. We had some pretty strong storms roll through the listening area a couple of weeks ago now. And if you experience storm damage from the wind or the hail, make sure that you have a trusted roofing professional on your side. And that is Joshua over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, they offer free roof inspections where they take tons of photos and videos so you can see exactly what they see, and then they'll work with you through that insurance process without making you sign anything, by the way. And they'll be upfront and honest about the work that needs to be addressed. They'll let you know, hey, it's time for a whole new roof. Let's go ahead and get that done. Or they'll say, hey, you just need a simple roof repair. If it is time to have the Pyramid team out to your home, reach out to Josh today. Schedule that free roof inspection. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
There's No Kings protest later this month.
Ooh. When?
Where? March 28th, South Campbell Avenue and East Battlefield and Glenstone. The full list of locations can be found on the No Kings website, which Ozarks First gives a handy link to. I mean, it's just like, are you guys still doing this? What is this even about at this point? Now, they claim, I went to their site, and it really is dangerous rhetoric. They're attempting to convince people that Trump is, disappearing people, that he's having people murdered. It's all conspiracy theory stuff. And it's unfortunately this sort of stuff that when you find these people who try to murder elected officials, murder Donald Trump, it's because they believe this stuff. And so while it is portrayed as completely benign, sort of, I mean, it's the rhetoric that encourages delusional people to try and murder political opposition. That's undeniable. I mean, we can argue, yep, they have the right to do that. Okay, fine. But that doesn't diminish the impact that it has on delusional people. So this is going to be taking place 11 to 2 and then 12 to 3. So 11 to 2 on South Campbell, 12 to 3 East Battlefield and Glenstone on March 28th. I'm sure it'll be a very well-groomed grouping of individuals that clearly care about their health just by observational standards. I mean, you can always tell the difference.
How many colors of hair do you think you'll see?
If you were to take two groups of people that were protesting or gathering for political purposes, and well, conservatives don't really do the sign thing so much, but just by the visuals, you can tell which side each is on. I mean, people on the left, they just clearly do not have any standards, self-standards, when it comes to appearance, when it comes to their health. And that isn't to say that conservatives are all these fit people who care about their health. But, I mean, you just go to like a pro-life event or something, and they're generally people that you can tell they're well taken care. They take care of themselves. They have a respect for themselves and how they look and how they sound when they speak. It's just it's a self-respect issue, and it's so clear. And then when they leave, you can have a million conservatives at an event. They leave, and at times it can be difficult to tell anyone was even there. You have a bunch of liberals get together, even at an Earth Day rally, and they completely trash the place. And it's consistent as well. So that No Kings protest later this month, just give you a heads up, that's going to be happening. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, I know from my family and any guests that we may entertain. It's the type of year we really appreciate the work that Daniel Hunter and his team did with our outdoor living space. And you get that fever. You want to get outside and enjoy the outdoors, get a little of that natural nutrient from the sun and that fresh air. And it's so much nicer when you have a space that was built just for you to do that. And one of the huge benefits that we have is that space specifically for the Traeger. I just kept it in the garage because I didn't have a good space outside for it, and I have to drag it out and move the lawn and all of that. And now it has its very own home, its very space. And so even doing that makes it so much more enjoyable. Whether you get water features and a dance floor and, fire pits galore, you have an entire entertainment venue, or something that's more just for you and your family to enjoy, sit around, have a nice iced tea or a cup of coffee or a beer. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, they can do it for you. They've got hunterhardscapes.com, their site to visit, also Nick's endorsements at ksgf.com. One of the things that I found humorous about the No Kings website that was, among other things, explaining why it is they're doing what they're doing. And they talk about, of course, Trump, he's a dictator. And part of his dictatorial personality traits is using our money in order to do these horrible things. And this is amusing, of course, because Trump doesn't get to just use our money. Congress allocates those dollars, which defies the concept that Donald Trump is a dictator. He doesn't just arbitrarily take money out of our paychecks and use it for what he wants as the executive. Those are dollars that another branch of government allocates for the usage. That is the opposite of a dictatorship. In fact, arguably, a lot of that's actual democracy. We vote for these people, they do that, and then he uses his authority that is granted to him constitutionally in order to execute those missions. Not a dictatorship.